we can have that. And there was a problem with Zoom, but I finally got all the recordings emailed to me, so I will upload both of these for you today. The one from the other day and the one today as well, so they'll be in there this
Okay.
evening. Zoom had a hiccup, and I don't know what took so long for me to get my notifications, but I finally got them this morning. So,
No sweat. We've been having troubles yesterday and today trying to log on, but we got through the challenges.
okay, cool. All right, so any questions from our last meeting? I've got my list in front of me. Couple of questions I have is, had you had a chance to talk with your battalion chief that handles pre-plans yet?
No, sir. I reached out to him and he's not available right now, but
Okay,
I have him on the list to talk about that. And his
okay,
name is Ro,
okay,
R-O-W. Yeah. But we're going to have a meeting where just him and I will sit down and talk to you about pre-fire plans.
okay, okay. And then, have y'all came up with a way y'all are going to segregate them? Are you gonna keep are you gonna use that zone field, or are you gonna do something different, or what have you kind of
I need to
decided
see
if
the
you
field
have?
again so that way I can explain something to you.
Okay, okay, we'll look at that here in a second. You do want minor violations turned on, so I will,
We do.
and I will show you, and it's actually is turned on, and we'll talk about that because you notice right here, we're going to go through this here shortly because this is what your actual inspection classifications will look at, or what we call as the inspection categories and classifications. So I'll kind of flip back and forth today so you can see the back view as well as the front view. So when we do a reference to something, I want you to see what
Can't
the
help him right
user is
now.
going to see on that process as well. I have that you want to globally set your annual periodic inspections for 12 months. And you mentioned November 30th, or I may mention November 30th. So that kind of tells me that you're going to pick a day, and then we're going to have it reschedule 12 months from that due date, what we call the due date, not the completed date, but the due date.
Yes,
And
sir. We're gonna stick with your suggestion.
okay, y'all gonna do November the 30th? Okay.
Yes,
So I'll
sir.
make sure that I let these guys know that. And then you said for inspections, you are going to break them out to be like 3 shifts, A, B, and C, so that we can rotate them each year. Was that your intention as
Yes,
well?
sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then
And when you say shifts, we can break them down geographically. Is that correct?
yes. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, you can break them down geographically. And then once we assign them the first time, we'll assign them to that apparatus
A shift, B
or
shift, C shift, and
unit.
the apparatus can rotate. I remember now.
Yep, the shifts will rotate, the apparatus will stay the same. So if it's
Okay.
car 4 is an inspector, then 1 year car 4 or A shift person would get it, 1 year B shift person would get it. And actually, since you're doing that, I mean, we can actually rotate. I think I'm gonna check that. I think we can just assign them to a shift and then rotate the shift. I need to double check that, but I think we can do that.
Okay.
That
Well, you let us
way,
know either way. That way we can make a decision. But we
sure.
like your suggestion.
Okay. Let me see if I have anything else.
The zones
The zones we're going to talk about.
when we get
I
into it. Okay.
I did I did document an enhancement request about the violation corrected while on site, and I haven't heard back on that one yet. So as soon
No
as I hear
problem. We're gonna
back on
move
that
forward,
one,
and I'm so sorry. We're gonna move forward and do the way that the people are doing it right now until that becomes an option. We're gonna come up with a solution. I think Alex already did, so we have something potentially in place until that is possible.
okay. Well, I mean that may, if they say yes, an easy fix, it may be out as soon as a week. So, or
Nice.
a day or so. So they move pretty quick if it's something that the developers can make happen pretty easily. So we'll know more about that when I hear back from them.
Nice.
Okay. So the zone thing is right here on your properties. We'll go to your property list, and each one of your properties has pretty much this row of ways to define them. So we have zone, box, fire district, and neighborhood. And
Now,
those
that's
are
the question I wanted to bring up. I
okay.
talked with John Longacre and I explained to him how the zones were initially set up in Firehouse and continued on through ER, as the zones were set up for everything within that geographical area, such as Lower Manor, the Springs, the Spanish Plains, Spanish Plains. If we click on that button, we have the means on our end right now currently to pull up every building that's within that zone. That's what we're trying to maintain. So if you were to pick Brownwood, go to Brownwood if you don't mind. Yeah, Brownwood was on that drop-down list. Okay. There you go. Yep. If you select Brownwood, we have a way of generating everything that's in Brownwood right there. Everything is in that geographic area. So if I was to assign Brownwood to a certain inspector, those would be all the buildings in Brownwood. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. So
Okay,
if we went to schedule this and you did it just by zone, then that person would have all of the properties, 166 properties in Brownwood would be assigned to that person.
that is correct.
Correct. So that's how you could do that process.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So
But
that's
that's how
good.
we currently do it now. If that's still possible, we'll
Oh,
do it
yes,
that way, and then you can.
that
Is
is
that still
possible.
possible?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay.
Yep. And so, we'll show you that when we go through the scheduling process as far as that goes. Okay. I don't have any other questions. I don't think. No. Okay. So there's a few different areas to explain in the management side of properties. Um, in the front end, you're able to document and add a new property and have it in your system to function with. In the management side, if you have rights to the management side and you get into the admin app in the back office, there are three areas we look at. There's one area called inspections, which is what this area is right here. And we'll come back and dig deep into this here in a second. And there's another area called properties. So in the properties area, it's broken into two different areas. If you'll notice, from this section to the left, it's all dealing with the pre-plan. This middle section going this way is all dealing with the individual properties. So you can add a new property into your database from the web browser, or you can add a new property in the database from the admin app, which is in the back of the software. You can also, inside of this session, this is where you can schedule pre-plans. If I create a new pre-plan, I can schedule a pre-plan and assign it to a truck in a shift. And this is where I can adjust the pre-plan assignments. So if I need to move 10 buildings from engine one on A shift because they have too many, and I need to give them to engine one on B shift, I can go into here, I can find those pre-plans and I can move them from a truck to another truck, from a shift to another shift. I can adjust pre-plans backwards and forwards any way that I need to do that from the pre-plan section of the system. So that's kind of how we manage the pre-plans. And when we have that discussion about pre-plans, that's where we'll kind of look to go through that process. In the property section, I can add a property, or I can come in here and I can look at follow-up properties. So when we say follow-up properties, we're basically talking about properties that have been established in your database. And this is where all that data is housed. And this gives you the management side of the property. So you'll notice in this sheet below, in this top box is where you can search for things. So for example, if you'll notice, I can come right here and I can come right here and say, just show me the properties in Brownwood, and I can hit search, and there are my 166 properties. So it matches what we saw on the front end, but it's back on the back end inside of here. This is where you can come in and document information about the property in general. And when you're in the back office to make changes, what you can do is if you click in a square and right click, you can actually do any kind of sorting, any kind of filtering that you would like to do inside of that. So this is filtering just by that address or filtering by property name. If I want to look for certain names, I can filter by property name, and or I can basically put them in numerical order to filter by property IDs and so forth. I can always come in here and search. So if I'm looking for something other than Brownwood and I'm looking for something on a certain street, I can come right here and hit Brownwood for the street name. Let me get my fingers in the right place. And when I search for Brownwood in the address, it'll give me a list of all the streets that are Brownwood, either boulevard, street, however it's listed in the system. It'll kind of bring all that information into place. So you'll notice that this is top box. In every one of these screens, you're going to have a filter box. And the filter is going to show you different features to where you can filter and look at stuff in that process. So this is one of the sections that we have inside of there. You can also filter in by just showing me those buildings that require inspection only, or I always like to check this just to make sure that the data came over and works correctly. I'll do a search for everything. So you'll notice there's 166 buildings in Brownwood that are requiring an inspection. There's
Out of the
179 total properties in here that don't require an inspection. So here's the first one that you'll notice. If I look at the require inspection module, I have one right here, and this is Banner Mercantile. And for some reason, it's flagged to not require an inspection. So I don't know if that is intentional or if that is something that came over when we brought data over that maybe is incorrect. So I
It's
always
incorrect because it does require it.
right. So and that's the thing is as whoever is responsible for your properties, they may want to go in, and I think by requiring your zones would be a good thing. And then I can come in here and click on this field, and you notice I can't sort by require inspection or not. So I could go through this list and say, okay, well, this place doesn't require inspection. And then down here, I have another one that doesn't require an inspection. Christine's on this street right here. So what
Okay,
kind
good
of
to know.
what happens with this, and I'm gonna kind of give you the backstory, is in older systems, and this is something that I've run across with multiple inspection bureaus, that for some reason in the system they were using, when the occupancy changed names, they had to create a new property. In our
Gotcha.
system,
They couldn't
you don't,
archive it.
right. So in our system, you don't have to do that, because if it's an address, that's the property we're looking at. So
Thank you.
just to show you that, if I came in here and said, okay, let's figure this out. I want 3688 and I want Megson Road. Let me search for everything that's on Megson Road. So you'll notice there are two properties one you're inspecting and one you're not inspecting.
Yep.
Odds are this was a change in the occupancy.
I think you might be right.
So we have a feature that's called merge property. So what we can do in that process is we can take Christine's, that first property number, all of the inspection history, and we can merge that into the Royal B and then get rid of Christine out of your system so you don't have old data. Just because it's the same building, it was just a name change and somebody inadvertently created a new property. Does that logic make sense?
It does.
So we give you the capabilities of merging your information about the building, your past inspection history, including violations, from the old property into the new property. What we don't bring forward are the contacts. So really, the contacts are not that important if the building is if that occupant is moved out. So we bring in the data that you want to keep that history of, and that's that inspection history, but we don't bring over the contact information. So I always tell fire prevention bureaus, when we're looking at managing properties, here's a great time to clean up your properties. And if you have old properties that are no longer, it's the same address, it's the same building, we just changed the name of the occupant and we created a new occupant in our system, let's clean that up and merge those into the address. So now when you run a history for that address, there is one property record, not 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Question for you.
Yes.
How would we, if we wanted to make it Royal B and not Christine's, what's the process? We select Royal B, then select merge property?
So when you click the merge property button, it brings up a different screen. It asks you for the first property number, and this is the property that will stay in the system. So this is where you would put Royal B's property number. And then down here is where I would put Christine's property number. So you notice it says, this is the property that will be deleted. So we give you very specific instructions on that process. So all we do is basically come here to this list. And if we wanted to do it, I would copy Royal B number right here and just copy that. And I would put it right here in the top section because I want to keep Royal B, correct?
Yes.
So I would double click on it.
Yeah, I'm saying as a hypothetical because I don't know, I need to confirm it, but that would be the process.
No, I got you that. So I would search for Royal B, and there it is.
Okay.
And I would say that's the property that I want to keep.
Okay.
And then I would come down here, and I would search for Christine's, and I'll just call it under property description. I'll call it Christine's. So you can search for it by name or by address, and I'll just say search for Christine's. Oh, wait, I got to tell you, it don't require an inspection because that's turned off. So there's Christine's. And at that point, if I hit merge, we would get rid of Christine's property and everything, all the past inspections would roll right into Royal B property.
Sweet.
So we do allow for that. And I always show that to fire prevention bureaus because I haven't run across one yet that didn't have somebody over the life of their system that when the name of a business changed, even though the building is the same, they created a new property in their database.
That happened under Firehouse prior to my legacy, and we were able to manage it a lot better through through ER. But everybody on the team will have the ability to correct that on site. So it's a matter of, do we have to turn on permissions for that for my team, or is that something that's automatic for my bureau?
No, when we give you permissions to update and cancel properties for your inspectors, then they'll have the rights to do that.
Gotcha, because I don't want the crews having that capability, because they
No.
mess
We
up
would just,
my
that's only an
Yeah,
inspection part side. That's not, and only
Yep.
something the inspectors can do, not the company officers on the street.
perfect, because I don't feel right them adding, properties or building occupancies without permissions.
Right, no, the guys doing pre-plans will not be able to add properties. They can just edit information in the properties.
And screenshot it, send it to us, and we can do the corrections.
Correct. You can have that done as well. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So that's
Hey,
one of
Chuck.
the things. Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Tom. I have a question for you. Going back out of this, can we just put in an address number and find businesses, or does it have to have
No,
a
you can
street
do a
name?
number. So if I want to go look at properties, and if I come to the address and I just put in, let's just say 1068, and I tell it to hit search, it'll show me every street with 1068. So I've got Lake Sumter here, Lake Sumter there. If I put in another address, let's just say 1001, because that's a common one that's out there, and I hit search, it shows me you have 1001 right here on this location, and then you have 1001 Lakeshore at this location. So yes, you
Perfect, thank
can
you.
just do an address number as far
Sounds
as
good.
that
Good
goes.
question, Tom.
Yes, so you can do that as well. And then you notice over here for the property IDs, if you don't know the full number, you can have it just partial number and it'll search. Or if you want an exact match, you can click the exact match button for that perspective as well.
And
Now,
that property ID is assigned by your system, correct?
yes, when you add a new property, it's assigned by our system in that process for sure.
I just
It
want to
does
make
do
sure I
that.
don't get mixed up with, the county appraiser's property IDs.
Yeah, no, you can do that. Now, the other thing you can do is, and I don't know if this is something, I just like this feature, is on the front end, it's called building name. On the back end, it's called alias. What that is, for example, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Like if you have 20 McDonald's throughout your whole district, you can give each one of those McDonald's, even though in the property description, you may have McDonald's number 1285, McDonald's number 8569, whatever you put. You could come over here in the alias and you could give each one a general name of McDonald's so that you can come in here and now search for every McDonald's locations in your database, no matter which store number it is. So we allow you to have an alias for a property in case of that situation, as far as looking at that. So there's multiple ways you can capture that property. So this is where you look at your individual properties. Well, right, if you jump over to the complex, this is where you can also look for properties, but what it lets you do is it lets you come in and look at your complexes. So for example, if I build in a complex, and this is one you have, it will show me what properties are listed in that complex. So now I can go individually and look at these properties, or I can see them in the whole complex. Well, at that point, if I realize that, hey, wait a minute, I don't have all of my properties listed under that complex, I can come right here and say add existing properties. And when I click on that button, it brings up a list of everything. So now I can come to the address and put the address that was listed for that property and now get a list of it. So if I come and look at this, it's 337 Colony. So if I come right here and say, show me everything at 337 Colony, and I hit search, you'll notice there's none there. But if I hit not require inspection, you'll notice there's none there because I've already got them all. They're already in this list. So it depends on what you have in the process and how your system is built out. And let's just test this to see what happens there.
I want to say, I have a one we could use.
Okay. But we have
We
to
have
build it as a
Brownwood
complex
Apartments.
first. So I'll show you this. So let's talk about that. So to make this a complex, what do I do? Well, the first thing I have to do is go to that property. And then you said Brownwood Apartments?
Yeah, Brownwood Apartments is a, description that we have. They're a complex with multiple apartment buildings.
Okay, so
That's
there
within
is,
Brownwood.
okay, so it says there's no one as Brownwood Apartments. So,
Okay, they don't have it descripted as Brownwood Apartments yet, I guess. But if you
okay,
put in the zone Brownwood,
okay,
up in the Brownwood zones, we'll see what's on the list, and I can help you tell you,
okay. So let's go
because
to
I have
Brownwood
yes, sir.
and we'll
This would
search.
be a good one that we would start, because we never had that capability before.
Okay, so now we
So
can
if you,
come to property description and put them in A to B order. All right, so
okay,
there's all your properties.
now I might have them by addresses. There you see, keep going, yep. I don't see the name Brownwood Apartments in there yet.
Would it be
You know
called
why? I
something
think I just
else?
realized is they named them the names. They gave them names. Each apartment has a different name, but they're in the Brownwood complex. So I would have to go in there and do that. But I see
Correct.
the opportunity.
So do you know the address of that? What that address would be by
Not off the
chance?
top of my head. I'd have to pull it up on
So let's do this.
my ER.
Let's
Just give me
go.
a second. I'll see what I can get for us.
So, all right, so here we go. I have a bunch of stuff. I can always tell by addresses. So like here's 3 that are
Yeah, they're not
2666.
on West Torch. They're in
Okay,
Tritium. There you go. Loss at Brownwood. That's it. It's called
okay,
Loss at Brownwood. And that one's called Hickory. And that
okay,
one's called Sweet Gum. I gave you the wrong name, so the name of
okay,
it would be Loss at Brownwood. That would be the
okay.
description.
So I would come in here and I would type in, I'm just gonna put loft and let's hit search and see what we get. So you notice, there we go. There's all your loft
Yep,
at
those are the
Brownwood.
apartments in that complex.
Okay,
Because when I built them, I also put the name and the number, every information I could have on it.
okay.
So they also
So
have numbers for us.
So what you could do in this process is, I see you have the complex and that's the clubhouse and that's the building. And there's 12 buildings altogether in this. So you
Yes,
could
sir.
make a 13th building and just have it listed at 2640 Trillium and make that the complex and then add all of these to that complex. And then for the apartment complex, the main building, I would put that common area information, common
Which would be the
contacts.
clubhouse.
So the clubhouse would be the main building. So
Yeah, the
basically,
clubhouse
yes.
is the first building you come into in the complex, and that's where the FACP main brains are located.
Okay. So you could take this property right here, which is this building. It is actually the clubhouse, and we'll bring it in. And I could come right here under this section and you're looking at the building and you're looking at everything. And you'll notice that in looking at this building, you'll notice there's all kind of information, require inspection, property status. You can change property status to change the property status. Down here below, we have information, apartment number or unit number, the number of stories and that information. And then right here, I could say, is this the complex? And I would just change it to yes.
Excellent.
And then what I would do is I would just, instead of saying clubhouse, I would say lofts at Brownwood. And then if you inspect the clubhouse as a separate inspection, I would put the clubhouse as a property. I wouldn't make the clubhouse the main inspection suite. I would actually have lofts at Brownwood as the complex. And then I would have the clubhouse and those other 12 properties or 11 buildings as the properties adjoined to the complex.
So the complex won't generate an annual inspection requirement
Well, it will
as a
if you want.
13th building?
Well, you could keep it as the complex and leave. If you want to keep the clubhouse as your main complex building, you can. You can leave it like
Okay.
this. It's totally up to you. And then you could create an inspection for just this property. But then when you add the other properties to it, you could also have individual inspections for every property. But then what the benefit
Correct.
is when it comes time for the pre-plan, I would just pre-plan the lofts at Brownwood complex and not individual property in the complex. Does that make sense?
So how would you do that? I can see how you're trying to group everything together, but a complex is not a building. How would you do the individual buildings? Because we do individual buildings as well. So I see what you're saying. We can have a complex to show where all the buildings are located, where all the connections and FDCs are located. If we click on complex, I see that being a benefit. But as far as being a fire inspection requirement, that would be like
You would inspect all
showing 13
properties.
buildings.
Yeah, you would inspect
Pardon?
you would inspect all buildings. I'm talking on the pre-plan side. If it's like a situation to where it's a high school or it's a complex to where in this scenario you have different townhomes. Does your fire trucks pre-plan every townhome in that complex, or
Yes, sir.
they do pre-plan
They-
every townhome?
Yes, sir. And every building at the school.
Okay. So
So what we
they'll
do
walk,
is I see what you're trying to put down. We can build the word complex in there. We can come up with like a general overview for the elementary school, but there's like 6 buildings there that are separate and get pre-fire planned. But we could have one for a complex view and one for the individual view. Is that what you're thinking?
no, I'm thinking that so separate your pre-fire plan from your inspection.
Correct.
And I'm
So
thinking
when we get to
that
pre-fire, when
only,
we get to pre-fire plans, we'll dig in deeper into that, but we'll build
right.
it that way.
So let me go back to your elementary school concept. Is
Okay.
in most agencies, what happens is the inspectors will inspect every building in the complex for a
Yes, sir.
life safety code inspection. On the operations side, the engine companies will do a walkthrough of the whole complex, but they're only going to record the actual pre-plan one time at the complex level. They won't enter a separate pre-plan for each building at the elementary school that they walk through. They would just have one
Okay.
pre-plan that covers the whole complex, is what I'm
I
trying to
like
show
that
the
idea.
difference in. Okay. So, and I think it
But
kind of got lost in translation. So,
I did. I got my wires crossed, but
yeah,
that won't come up as when we give the name a complex, it won't come up as an occupancy for me to inspect, would it?
you cannot
So I won't
inspect,
have like, I won't have a complex inspection and I could have a complex inspection that doesn't require an annual.
yeah, you can have a complex inspection that will
Yeah,
require
I
an
can do that
annual.
with this system.
Because here's the
Okay, I
thing here.
think,
So here's the thing about it. Let's take a strip mall. If you take a strip mall that's sprinklered, there commonly is only one location for that sprinkler system for the whole entire strip mall, right?
yes, sir. We break them down to 3 sections, but they're separated. But yes, sir, the strip mall could be broken down to east, west, or the main one. Yes, sir.
Right. So I would take that one building and make that a complex. That way on that one building, I'm checking anything that covers all of the suites in that one building, i.e. the sprinkler system, the alarm system, if it's one major alarm for the whole complex tied into the sprinkler system, so that every time I inspect a suite, I'm not having to go back and look at the alarm system because I've already done that inspection under the complex. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. What you call in your complex, we call it fire riser rooms, and we call them fire sprinkler FACP rooms.
Okay, so what we call that is we call that common areas. So in every
Okay.
complex, a complex would have you inspecting the common areas of that complex. And then you would have
Such
an
as fire alarms
inspection.
and fire sprinklers.
Right, exactly. I think we're starting to connect now. So
Yeah.
so then next, I would go and do an inspection on all the properties inside of that complex, looking physically at what's required in their location.
That
Like
makes sense.
okay, and so that's kind of the way that our system is designed to where if you want to use a complex process, you can actually use the complex process in here. And I kind of wanted to
Okay.
explain that to you. So if it's some people like to use it, some people say no, it's kind of confusing, and I get that. But We have a way to group stuff if you would like to group stuff.
We do. We like to have the complex in a group if possible, because we are operation oriented here for our division. So
Right.
when we look at things, we ask how this is going to affect operations, and that's the goal.
Correct. And the other part of that is when you're scheduling inspections, you can pull up a complex. So if you have like a hospital, or if you have a large shopping center, and there may be 20 or 30 different properties that have to be inspected in that one complex, then I can schedule that entire complex to one inspector instead of having to go find those 20 or 30 different properties and schedule them to that inspector.
I like to learn how to build that because that makes sense.
Okay, so we can, as we dig more into this and we get beyond the overview and how we operate, or how our system is set to operate, we can help you drill down into that and how to build out complexes and group stuff together and so forth. The key thing about a
Awesome.
complex is it's that common area or that one location on that site that is going to have a common area inspection, a fire alarm inspection, anything for it. And then we can take the other properties and join it to that complex, because the one thing I like about that is I can enter the owner of the complex one time under the complex. And if the guys respond to anything at any one of the properties, they'll be able to look back at the owner information for the complex to see if, to make sure that's correct as well.
Excellent.
So that's kind of how we do the complex thing. So I won't mark this as a complex yet, and we'll come back and look at that in that process.
When we
So-
get ready to dig and start mining that data, I'll do that one-on-one with you, so that way I
Sure.
can make sure
Yep,
I
we can do that.
understand it and I can pass it on to the team.
Sure. So under properties, we have follow-up properties, which we talked about, which is a list of all the properties that are in the database. We have complexes and we have merged properties. Well, you can also delete a property. So there's two ways that we function in our system. Our system by default is set up to show you a list of properties that require inspections. And we consider those properties to be the properties that you're working with right now in the system. We also allow you to store other properties that don't require inspections in your system for historical purposes. So
Thank
some
you.
departments will say we'll do that. So the third question comes up is, what if when a building is torn down at that location? What do we do at that time? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. Is since the actual inspection is related to the building, you could delete that property out of your system and start with a brand new property number with a brand new building to show the life of the new building that's being built. Or you can keep the existing property, just change the name, change all the building information, and it will show all of the changes in the audit log in that process. My personal opinion, and from best practices from a prevention standpoint, unless there is a state law or something that requires me to keep that property information for so many years after the building has been torn down, I want to start with a clean slate. If I've got a new building, I want to give that building a clean slate. So I'm not looking at violations from 5 or 10 years ago from a separate building that was building and stand there. I'm looking at violations from the current building that was constructed. We don't
And that's
tell
the way we
you,
would proceed,
Yeah.
because that is in line with state statute. You got to keep it for 7 years, even after the building has been demolished.
right. So in that scenario, what you could do is you could create a new property at that address. And then when the 7-year statute is expired, you can delete that old property out of your system and not carry over the violations. That's the only time that I will tell somebody I'm okay with having two properties with the same address, is if the one property that I'm having in there no longer requires inspection and it was the old building and that old building was demolished and a new building was erected, then I will highly recommend every day you need to create a new property for that building because it is a new structure that you now want to inspect and maintain inspections on. So I just highly recommend that throughout the process. So
That's,
we do give you
that's
the
why I like to,
option.
that's the way I want to proceed.
Okay. So we do give you the option for that. So let's talk about the third thing over here, or the last thing over here in the property section, and that's settings. So in the settings section, these are things that you get to build into your database. So for example, first thing is property statuses. You get to create a list so that when you're filtering out your properties, you can segregate your properties into different property statuses. So when we talk about property statuses, we're talking out, for example, I may want to have a status that says it is year-round occupied, or normal operation, or open or occupied and operating year-round. I may have one that's open and operating seasonal. I may have one that is going to be demolished, which means that building is no longer a building in our system. I may have one that's going to be a property that may be vacant, if you want to change it to a vacant status in your property system. So these are where we allow you to decide which statuses are you going to use in your building. So when we talk about statuses, I'm going to come back to the property list, and I'm just going to show you right here where we use that. So under property details, we have a section right here called property status. You can filter on that property, you can query against that property, and then you can use that to determine and segregate your buildings. We don't know what your inspection bureau wants to use for property status, so we allow you to create that list and build it into the software.
Okay.
The next setting
And
that's
that, how do I get to build that in the software again? I go to settings,
you'll go
property
to
status, and then
yeah, so
I get, how do I add,
just start typing.
okay,
You'll
and
just
then once
start
I start
typing in there.
typing, and how do I save it?
So watch, I'm gonna put in one for demolished. Is that a good one you want to use?
Yes, sir.
Then I'd hit, basically I go to the line below it and click in it and I type in the next one.
Okay, I see. It just, and you can go back and do it, so we can put vacant as we, and
Yeah,
so on.
yes, you can do that. Correct.
Or,
You just
under
have to come up,
renovation.
right, there you go, another one, under renovation, under or remodeled, in remodeling or so ever, so that you can run lists to see what the status is of it. Then when the inspector goes out to do an inspection, or if the guys go out to do a pre-plan, we can teach them to, hey, always check the status to make sure the status is current for that property. So now you're keeping up with your buildings throughout the district as the life of the building goes on.
Now, if we want to delete, say like we change our mind, we don't need to use that one, and we don't want to cause any confusion, how do I delete it? Just highlight it, delete it, and then
No,
it goes away?
a quick email to support and they'll hide it from your list.
Okay, because we have one in our old system that says follow-up, and it causes a lot of confusion under the status, and we should never have had that in there. But
Yep.
say like we decided we did something, we want to make a change, I just call support, walk them through them, tell them what to delete, and it goes away.
Yeah, all you do is send an email to support and say, hey, under
Oh,
my
good.
property statuses, can I remove? And you tell them what word you want to remove and they'll hide it from your list.
Sounds great. I'll have my guys come up with a list of keywords they'd like us to do, and we can start building it as soon as I log in.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yes. So you notice the
Okay,
next two are
'cause-
property permit type. So y'all don't really do permits, so we won't worry about that. Below that, we have one for emergency markers. And this is basically where you can document, and you'll notice we give you a list of emergency markers that are already in the system. So you can put those in as markers that can show up on your map view inside of that process. So this is basically a list of markers that are there. And you'll notice there's a whole list of those that can be added in to your system as emergency markers. And this is
Perfect.
basically
And
the
those
map
are
view.
standard and we can always add more?
Yep, that's correct. You're exactly right. And then below that, we have what's called the floor list. So what the floor list is if you want to designate certain verbiage in a multi-story pre-plan to designate, like, for example, if this is suite 200, which tells me that it's on the second floor or whatever, you can actually go into a pre-plan and indicate which floor that property is on in that perspective. But we don't know what you're going to call your different floors, because some will call a basement,
Sectors.
they'll call it 0, or they'll call it sub 1. Other places call a basement a basement. Other areas will call the first floor ground floor, and some agencies calls the first floor the first floor. So it all depends on how you want to label your floors. And what you'll do is you'll put in the description of your floors and you'll tell us what order it needs to be in, so that when it shows the list, it'll show them in that order of that process. So it, by default, it's going to show it in alphabetical order. But if you say, no, I don't want it in alphabetical order, I want them to see the first floor, then the second floor, then the third floor, then the fourth floor, you tell us what order. And I often tell people, anytime that we give you an order column, separate it by 10. So 10 is first, 20 is second, 30 is fourth. 30 is third, 40 is fourth, and so on. So depending on how many floors you have in your tallest buildings that you want to categorize, you can build in what you call your floors to make it a common name across the whole system. So that's
Sounds
another
good.
list that we let you create inside of that process. So we'll knock those out of here real quick and we'll get out of there. Property details. Okay. Follow-up properties, complexes. Let's get rid of complex. Um, Property details. We'll talk about the property details. And one of the things I want to talk about under property details and everything, anywhere in the back office that you see a dashed line about it, if you double click on that dashed line, it's going to bring up another list. So the dashed line brings up another table in that process. So if you're working in the back office and you see a dashed line somewhere, it's going to bring up another list of information, like right here for these stairway values, that there should be a lookup table, but nobody has a lookup table there. The other thing that comes into play under follow-up properties, if you click on the property number, it brings up that property specific information. So all of that information is there as far as that process goes in the software. So the other thing you can do with a property is you'll notice under these areas right here where it talks about your property details. Here's all the information that's available in the front office. It's here in the back office. And then here's all your pre-planned stuff, like your fire protection list is right there. Your exposure list is right there. Your access list is right there. And then anything in remarks is right there. So everything that we brought over from your other software that dealt with that property, we also have it available to you here inside of the property details section when you're talking and looking at properties. So
Can you click on the inspections on the details? Why can I see
sure,
what's on that tab?
it shows you the history of past inspections.
Okay,
Yeah, so all of that information is both in the front end and in the back office for those properties as well.
all
So
right.
it
And if we
shows you
want to
that
see the
information.
documents, that's the original reports from ER?
Correct. Yes, that is. So we'll let that update. In your back office, it likes to update every so many minutes. So we just kind of let it do its thing to keep your data straight. So
Good deal.
that's where you'll find the general information about properties in that process. So we'll come right here and we'll exit out of that property. Yep, and then we're fine. So the other thing that we next look at inside of properties is going to be the inspection side. So you'll notice now I clicked on inspection. And what the inspection side is, this is where you can actually indicate your inspections. And you can build in the type of inspections you're going to conduct, and you can build in what items are going to be on the inspection checklist when you conduct them. So in looking at it from the back office, you'll notice you have two areas. You have inspection assignments, you have inspection classifications, and you have settings here. And then over here, you have permit inspection classification and permit inspections. All the way to the left, you have new inspections, follow-up inspections, completed inspections. And this is where if you need to remove an inspection because it was assigned by accident, this is where you can go and delete an inspection off of that particular property if you want to do
Okay.
that in the system.
But
So
we cannot delete, captured data, right? We cannot go in there and delete that.
no, you can only delete an inspection that has not been completed. Once it's completed, it cannot be deleted.
Thank you.
So when we look about these things, this is the first thing we'll talk about is in building out your inspections, you'll notice that under the settings, there's a couple of things we can look at. So the first thing is this, inspection activities. And this is if you're doing any type of tracking for time inside of the inspection item itself. Remember on the front end yesterday when we were doing inspection, let me show you that. We'll go to a property. Let's just back out of this. And we'll just bring up an inspection. So what we're talking about is inside of this inspection, down here, inside of here, we have the feature called time tracking. So you'll notice we have time tracking. And if you want to use this, and I think you said you mentioned something about time tracking inside of the software when you're doing, have multiple guys doing one inspection.
Correct. That's when I would like to use it, so that way the person that's assisting can get the credit for being on the inspection.
Yeah, so I just knocked myself out of my system. Hold on one second.
Okay.
So I'm back in.
I'm not
So-
concerned about the everyday inspection. I'm more concerned of capturing the other person's, work product.
Correct. So, and that's where, I think Benny loaded too many inspections on top of us. Hold on one second. He was loading a bunch of inspections since we hadn't heard back from, one of the departments. He was loading
Hollywood?
another. Yeah, he was loading more inspections. So hold on one second. Let me get out of this department and go back to you guys. Okay, there we go. You go into the back office. There we go. Open existing session.
I like your
Yes.
dashboard, by the way. It's pretty slick.
Dashboard is pretty slick. They've done a good job on the old dashboard. So if we go to properties and go to inspections, let me just find the new one down here. So what we're talking about inside of the inspection is down here where we answer the time tracking information. So what we're talking about in time tracking is we're talking about logging those people. And when we're talking about the activities for logging those people, here's where you create that list. So it's one of the setting features that you go and create so that when you're documenting an inspection in the process, you're able to do that inspection process and go through the information and create that list. So
Can I
if
give you an
you,
example? They're both doing an annual inspection. And
okay,
would one of the items on the list would be assist, or what
yes,
other
you could do
departments
that. Whatever. So when you notice, we're just looking for, if I have an activity, you have to tell me what you want to do. And you can have activity would be field inspection dash lead, field inspection dash assist, if you wanted to do something like that.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I dropped my pen. Let me write that note down. I like that verbiage.
Okay.
And, first word you used was lead, and what was the other one?
Assist.
Assist, okay. Cause I got multiple assistants on there.
Yep. And the key thing you could do with that is you can even get more finite to where you can say it was an annual periodic inspection lead or an annual periodic inspection assist. And then you can have one
Yeah.
for other inspection. So that way you can not only break it down, but if they were the lead or the assist in that inspection, you could also go further to say if it was a annual periodic inspection or if it was a complaint or whatever you want to call it. You can, so this list you can design to meet the needs of what you're looking for with your time tracking.
And speaking of time tracking, if it's an individual on their inspection, it automatically tracks the time. We don't have to add time in there, is that correct?
It will track the time of the inspection. It'll track the date and time that the inspection was completed. But if it is
Correct.
an inspection and it's one inspector, they will need to, down here at the bottom, we give a field for them to enter their time, travel
Okay,
distance, and visit time. So while they're
perfect. So
on
we
scene
don't have to
doing
give
this,
clock time, we just give our,
minutes, number
our
of minutes,
minute
correct?
times.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out. And then that's what the other field with the, time track for the other person would come in. Cause they don't have to put the lead in there, cause the person should be the lead, or they still have to put a lead
If
person and
if I
assistant
what I
there.
would do is if I'm going to have more than one person on the inspection, I would list both the lead and the people assisting.
Okay,
And then if it was just one person, I wouldn't put anything in time tracking. I would just set it down here
I see.
so that I'm
I
able
might have
to.
a question or two about that later, but I
Sure.
see how that would work.
Okay. All right. So another setting we have inside of the inspections area is internal inspection status. So when we talk about internal inspection status, what we're talking about is over here at the very top of the inspection is right here is internal status. So if you have a creation, and where that comes into play is commonly where you'll notice we have an on hold button and we have a vacant button. It applies in here. I like to have that so that, let's say I go to do an inspection at a property and it's occupied, but the business is closed and I can't get in.
That
I
happens
can,
quite a bit, or
I
they're
can,
too busy to let us in.
right. I can flag that as on hold, but then I can also flag a status that says, denied access or business closed. So now when I can go back and look at that property list, I can say, okay, well, these were properties that I went to and I'm going to place it on hold because it was closed or it was ever in that process. So they could actually track that they made a visit there
Correct.
and it's going to still show as a pending inspection to be completed because what
But
I
we
would
made the
do
effort.
is, yeah, so what I would do is if I was the inspector, I would come in here, I'd hit edit, I'd place it on hold, I'll give it a status while it's on hold. I'd go to the very bottom of the inspection and I would hit save. Because now I'm updating to say, hey, I would put my travel duration in. I would put my my visit time that I was on scene. I would hit save because now I can show that I've updated that information to where I visited it. And now it's been placed on hold because the business denied access due to whatever their reason would be. So I
That's a
could
nice
put,
shortcut.
so I could, that way I could track that I made a visit there. Some other
Oh,
departments, they actually have in their checklist an item that says, where one of the first items, they have an area called general. And under that general area, one of the first items is, we're able to access interior of structure to complete inspection. And if they
can we
don't,
add
if
that to ours, please?
sure. And what they will do is if they can't do that, what that does is that captures that trip as an inspection trip,
Yep,
and then it reschedules it for reinspection.
that's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yep. So they'll make that a violation in their system so they can show that they visited that site, but the business owner turned them away. And in the inspection, they can now come down here and enter that in the inspection comments. And the nice thing about it is if they capture an email address, that guy will get an email that says, or the management company would get an email that says, hey, we attempted an inspection and we were denied access on this date. We're coming back on this day.
Yep. That's a nice way of rescheduling without having to make phone calls.
Exactly. It is. You can do that. So that's another feature in that process. So we have an internal status feature, and that's where that lookup table is listed. If you want to
Can you go
add
back
fields
one
to that.
second to the drop down tab on that one? Can you see what the choices are for internal status? I want to see what the choices are.
There's nothing there. It's empty.
Okay, what would be some of them that you've seen that has been productive to use?
I've seen one that says building being remodeled. I see one that says building under demolition, things of that nature, so that you can actually run it and say, okay, I've done these inspections, but the status of this building is what? It's being remodeled.
Okay,
So,
and then we can build that list.
yes, you can build that list as well.
All righty.
And then below that, the last one is inspection levels. And what inspection levels is designed to do is it helps you segregate the property. So for example, if you have a certain inspector that does your education because they're well versed in the educational facilities and the daycares and things like that, you could build in a level to each inspection property that says the inspection level needs to be only those that are educational or healthcare. And then you can use that to assign your healthcare occupancies to your healthcare inspector if you have a person that all they do are this type of occupancy throughout the whole jurisdiction.
We do have specialties, so that would work.
So this is where you can build in those inspection levels. And what that does is that allows you, when you're scheduling inspections, you can bring up a list of only those properties that have this inspection level assigned to them. And then you can assign those inspections to that one inspector.
How would I build that description?
Just type it in right here, same as the other. I would
Same
just
as
start.
we did before. Okay.
Yep, same
And
as we did before.
how would we delineate who's the specialist?
So what you would do inside of that process is when you go to schedule the inspection, which we're going to get to in a minute, when you
Okay,
schedule
so that's coming up. Okay, I got you.
yeah, that's coming up.
All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm like Benny. I'm excited.
Okay, well, we'll get you there. We'll get you there. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is the actual inspections. So now that we've got an idea what the settings are, we need to talk about what are the questions, or let me put it a better way. What are the violations that we want to put on our inspection checklist so that when the inspector goes
give me
out.
1 second. Somebody knocked at the door and there's kind of like a conversation going outside. I got to find out what's going on.
All right, well,
Give me a minute.
let's take 5 minutes.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes. We'll be back at 3:03.
All right, that'll work.
All righty. Hey, Chuck?
Chuck's here.
Hey, buddy, we just want to let you know we're back online. We're getting new phone lines and a new computer for Alex, so he's going to be in the other room on his phone, but if he gets cut off, he might have to dial back in. But we're ready to proceed.
All right, is everybody back? Or are we still waiting?
I'm here. What about the rest of you guys? Alex, you in? Alex, you in? I'm here. Uh-oh. How about you, Tommy?
Okay. All right, so we'll go back into here. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is probably one of the is the biggest part of handling the inspections from a bureau standpoint. And that's going to be when we talk about actually inspection classifications. So inspection classifications is where we actually go in and design a couple of different things. So the first thing we'll tell you is over here all the way to the right, we have what are called inspection types. And you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of inspection types in here. And one of the things that we always tell departments that when you're looking at inspections types, here is something to understand about how our software is designed to help you maintain efficiency. We would like to have that first visit to any property that you're conducting a routine, normal inspection on called an annual periodic inspection. And the reason why we want that is that we have built in internally in our system that when that first visit is called an annual periodic inspection and a violation pops up, we're going to automatically change that to what we call a reinspection visit. And then we will start counting the number of reinspections you have to visit a property before that violation has been resolved. And we give you and we let you keep track of each reinspection visit until that violation is resolved. Once that violation is cleared and there are no violations on that visit, we will do what's called, we will make it a recurring inspection, and 12 months from the original scheduled date, we will schedule the next annual periodic inspection for you automatically. So that's where we want you to come in there and document that first one as annual periodic, because our system is built around that recognition. All the rest of these you can use all day long, but they're not going to automatically reschedule. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, sir, it does. And when we get to inspections for plan reviews and new constructions, I may have one or two questions. But just to recap what you said, any building we walk in is a general annual periodic inspection. That's the tab we want to start with because that starts the clock ticking.
Correct. That starts the clock ticking. You're exactly right. So the other thing we allow you to do is we allow you to decide which checklist or which inspection list you want us to create. When you assign that inspection and you create that inspection and it pops up in the system, what questions are you going to need to answer to get a complete inspection. So you'll notice we allow you to build one checklist per one inspection type. Now, if any of these are permit inspections, we don't want to have them here under the inspection list. We'll actually want to move those over to the permit side of the system so that
Yes, sir. That was my question.
you can schedule permit inspections separate from routine life safety code inspections. They're calculated differently in your system. They can have different checklists, and they can be set to not reoccur also.
That's what I need to set up, please, when the opportunity affords us.
So what we need to know from you, and this is, I guess, your first thing of homework, is this whole list of inspections that came in. I need to know which one in all of these lists you have are basically going to need to be permit inspections. So
Okay,
that's
I'll
the
go
first
through
thing I
them.
need from that.
Is there a way I can move them for you, or you just need me to email you a list of them?
List of them, and I'm gonna have them moved for you automatically.
Okay, because I'll probably snapshot them, highlight them, and then send them to you to get moved.
Yep, that's fine, not a problem.
Okay, I
Because
got
what,
it, and this is inspection types. I'm writing down my homework assignment.
right. So, and here's the process of this. And this is the best way. So in a permit inspection, you're basically going and visiting that site for a predefined specific reason. So what we like to do is bring those permit inspections over to the permit side, build a checklist specifically for that permit so that when that inspector goes out on a permit inspection, he may find a violation that he may not approve the permit. It may have to go back for a revisit, but that's a revisit for a permit inspection, not a revisit for a general inspection of a property to where you're doing the full annual periodic. So that's why we want to separate those so they're looked at as two different types of inspections that are conducted.
Which they are.
Exactly. So that's the first thing. So the other thing you'll notice is once we move all of those over to the permit side, you're going to have a list of permits. Can I put you on hold just 1 second? I got a fire chief calling me. Just give me 1 second.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That was a fire chief that's been trying to get a hold of me all day with a technical issue. So
No sweat. We understand.
okay, so the next thing we can do is if you have some that are left over and you say, hey, you know what, we're not going to do that inspection no more, you can actually make it non-active, which keeps it in the system for historical purposes, but it's no longer visible for an inspection type to select.
I got a question, and I like that feature. For example, you see where it says, I don't see it on here. There it is. Emergency plan
Emergency,
as an
yeah, right
inspection.
here. Yep.
Yeah, that's an inspection that we have to do by the state for every assisted living facility. That would not be an annual inspection, but we consider that an inspection.
Okay.
They don't always get it right the first time. That would generate. Would that mess up your annual periodic scheduling?
No, because since if you're not doing this in place of an annual periodic, are you?
No, that's an
Okay.
addition.
Yep. No, I would leave that as an emergency plan.
Okay.
I would define a checklist if there's a certain checklist you need for that type of inspection.
Yes, sir. We'll
And
build
then,
it and add it in there.
right. And it would show as a standard inspection. And then over here, if it's going to be reoccurring, you would tell it how often. So since it's blank and 0, it's not going to automatically schedule for a reoccurring inspection.
Now, the reason why I brought that up is you talked about your system generates letters
Yes.
for violations. How
Yes.
about letters for plan reviews being approved? Is that a possibility?
Yes. So any inspection that's done in the system, you can generate an inspection letter.
Good.
And the inspection letter will either say that they passed, or if they indicate items on the checklist that need as a deficiency, it will list the deficiencies. If there are no
That is so.
deficiencies, it
Yep.
will say that we did a plan review inspection, and in a watermark across the page will say passed.
Nice. That's all I needed to find out.
Yep, we can do that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So, and you'll also notice that the next thing next to the not active, we have a section called priority, and it's either standard or critical. And the difference with a standard or critical inspection is this, is a critical inspection will always show up on the top of the inspection list. So when I say the top of the inspection list, if I come right here and I come right here to inspections and go back to the main browse page, if there was a critical inspection, it would show up on the top of this list and the property description would be in red type. And over here, it would show it as a white bubble for a critical inspection. So what we do is in our system, if the inspection is considered critical, we would actually move it to the top of the list above everything else so that when that inspection or that person assigned that inspection logs in, they will see that at the very top of their list. So we always show the critical inspections first in chronological order, and then we show the standard inspections in chronological order after we've listed all the critical for that inspector to do. So the nice thing about this is if I'm doing an annual periodic that is a standard inspection and I have a violation that is critical, like for example, whatever you would consider to be a critical violation, I can go into that inspection that I'm currently conducting and I can upgrade its status from standard to critical. So when the violation reinspection is listed, it will show up on the top of my list. So we
Gotcha.
allow you that flexibility.
For that inspection only.
For that inspection, right, for that inspection only, correct.
Good deal.
And then next to that, we have the default system. So what this is saying is, and the way I'm reading this, just to let you know, is if I do an inspection and anything that I do not check as not okay or NA, when I hit submit and confirm at the bottom of the inspection, the way the system is defined is it's going to put NA for any one of those items that has not been checked not okay. Is that how you want your end result to look?
I usually like to put the end results as NA to show that it did not apply, that we did check it, if that's what you're asking.
Correct. That's what I want to make sure, because some departments like to say, okay, well, if it's something I reviewed and it's okay, I don't want to check okay through every box.
Correct.
I want to just have it at the end of the report. If it's something I reviewed, then I want to check it as okay, that I reviewed it and it was okay. If it's something
I'll
that
give
was
you-
not applicable, I will go in as the inspector and I will make that section not applicable. And what I'm talking about is this, and I'll flip over, is I'm gonna
Okay.
come in today and look at, I'm gonna go to a new inspection and I'm gonna come down here. I'll go to this, the core physical therapy. And here's my inspection. So if this system has no fire inspections, I'm going to come through this process, let it load all the inspections. Benny loaded a lot of inspection checklists in here, by the way. We
Well,
hadn't
I
heard back
appreciate
from,
that a lot, because I thought I noticed some earlier, because that was my biggest fear.
yeah, he loaded
But
a
because
lot
you got the-
because there's a lot that we can, like he says, is we can easier remove stuff than it is to add stuff. So let's say if
Well,
this property
that.
had no fire separations, I would come in here and I would click NA for all of these properties. If
Correct.
there were no lightweight trusses, I would click not okay. If there were no commercial cooking equipment, I would go ahead and click not okay before I even started my walkthrough. And then I would do my walkthrough. And if I found an issue in a certain section, like a door was blocked, I would click not okay and I would document that. But then everything else that wasn't checked not okay, not applicable, that I did inspect, when I got to the bottom of the page and hit submit and confirm, it would check those items off as okay. That's what
Yep,
this
that's why I
column
like
is
it.
explaining. So,
Yep, that's what I need.
okay, so
Yep.
and I want to make sure, because I got my button to crack one time on this. I don't want to do it again. If we
What
change
happened?
this, if we change this to okay, if that person doesn't click the group as not applicable, it is going to click okay when he hits submit and confirm. So that's a workflow thing, is you have to remind your inspectors, if that section of the checklist is not applicable to this inspection, they need to go click not applicable, and I keep screwing it up, not applicable in the actual group.
Now, how can we do it where it'll automatically say NA and we get to change the status?
Basically right here, just by moving it back to NA. So if you don't
That's how we
click,
normally do it.
okay, so if you don't click okay or not okay, it's going to put it as not applicable in that process.
That's what I prefer. Because, for example, if I have a annual inspection and it has cooking equipment or doesn't have cooking equipment, if it doesn't, I'm going to put NA.
Okay, so
I
you
want
realize,
to put everything that's not applicable as NA, and I want to be able to change it to either pass or fail. Does that make sense?
yeah, but you're putting more work on your inspectors.
Chief,
Okay,
exactly.
how can I make it easier?
Can we talk about that in a little bit, Chief?
Absolutely.
Do y'all
Okay.
understand my workflow?
Yes, and I'm thinking that at the beginning, we normally click OK on everything. Then as we go through, we put NA if they don't have the cooking equipment and stuff to that effect. I can talk to
I
Alex.
do the opposite.
Tell me, okay.
Well, let's talk about it right now and come up with a consensus now. The reason why
Okay,
you do
so
yours opposite from mine, and I understand, but go ahead, sir.
So let me explain my workflow and see if
Yes,
it
sir.
makes sense. I'm the inspector. I'm walking into the building and I'm going to do an inspection. And I have all of these categories that we built into our checklist. And I know, and I'm sitting out in the parking lot. When I pull up and I sit out in the parking lot, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull up this inspection. I'm going to look at the property details to see if there's anything that I need to look at. And then I'm going to click right here and go to the pre-plan list. And I'm going to look at a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to look at, is there any history of past calls that I need to know about? And you'll notice this property has had some alarm system issues in the past. So I'm
Nice.
plugging that in as an inspector. Next thing I'm gonna look at is,
How do you plug that in?
I just think, I'm looking at the building and I'm saying, okay, I need to
Okay,
review
when you
that.
say, okay,
I'm
you're
saying
not
I'm
actually
plugging,
adding that to the report.
no, I'm actually plugging that in as my mental review of this building.
Copy
I'm gonna
you.
see the
I
last
see
time
it,
it
Charlie.
was, I'm gonna see the last time it was pre-planned and say, okay, it's been pre-planned. It looks like it was pre-planned in May. So cool. So I know that a lot of this data is just recent, been updated. Not a problem. I'm gonna see who's the last person was that did an inspection on the property. And I'm gonna say, okay, Edward did the inspection. It was completed. If I want to go look at his inspection notes, I would open up right here, the inspection. And it would show me that inspection, his process. At that point, I'm gonna scroll down. I'm gonna go past this stuff and I'm gonna go right here to look at the violation history. What were the past violations listed on this property? Okay, I've got that under control. I've looked at those 4 things. I've got to put a good grasp on the building, and I'm still sitting in my car. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my list and I'm going to say, is there anything in this section, in any of these groupings? Because hopefully you do your groupings to where they're applicable to different parts of or different workflows of the building. And I say, okay, there's no commercial cooking equipment here. I'm gonna go ahead and click not okay. There's no fueled equipment here. I'm gonna click not okay. There's no fire alarm in this building. I'm gonna click not applicable. There's no sprinkler system in this building. I'm gonna click not applicable. And after I clicked not applicable to all of those that I may not have to look at inside of this inspection, I'm now going to get out of my car. I'm going to walk into the business. I'm going to introduce myself, talk to whoever's responsible and tell them what I'm here to do. They give me access to do the inspection. I'm going to walk through the building and do my inspection. If I find a problem with the fire extinguisher, I'm going to stop. I'm going to click on fire extinguisher and I'm going to basically say, boom. If it's not fully charged and operable, I'm going to click that as a violation. I'm going to put my notes. There should be their compliance notes. It's going to automatically schedule the correction date once I tell it how far out to do a rescheduling inspection. If it's something that I'm going to allow to be carried over to the next annual periodic, I'll check the box as a minor violation. If it's something that deems me coming back for a revisit in 30 days, I won't check the box as a minor violation. Then I'll continue on walking through the building. After that point, I'll come down here. I'll talk to the owner and I'll say, hey, who should I send the inspection letter to? I never say violation letter. I say inspection letter to, and I'll
Okay.
pull this up and I say, I have a Yvette Flores and I have a Naomi Hill. And they say, oh no, don't send it to the other one of those. Send it to so-and-so. I put their email address in right here. Then at that point, I'll come down to the bottom and I'll say, hey, can I get a signature as a person on site to verify that I was here to do the inspection? I'd type their name in, I'd have them sign their name, and I click OK. I would do a little exit interview with them and tell them that, hey, we did find a couple of issues. We'll send the letter to your management company or to you. We will come back and revisit, or, hey, we need you to get these things fixed. Thank them for allowing me to do the inspection. Hit submit and confirm. When I hit submit and confirm, if it's not clicked not applicable, or it's not clicked as not okay, it's going to default everything else in that list to okay. So when I walk through the building in those areas, I did not see any apparent issues with any of those other items. That's the way I would do an inspection.
That's how I prefer it. I was wording it differently, but that's the whole explanation. But I just want to make sure that my team knows if you do not put the NA in there, it's going to be as a pass. And it looks silly if you pass a fire suppression system when it doesn't have one.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying is chief, it has to have that workflow. And I think that the
That's the best
inspector, and,
workflow I
and
agree
I,
with that workflow. That right there works great.
and I wanted to hear from your inspectors to see what their thoughts were on that workflow.
Excellent.
Yeah, now that I understand it a little bit better, I get it. And yeah, that's great. That'll work for me too.
Okay. And to me, I found that to be the best way. Cause I don't want, and I'll tell you this, I've had a department that we just rolled out to their inspection bureau, because the other thing I want to show you is, and I hate to even say that, is we actually have a button we can add on the violation items once we get to violation items, to where we can make you physically go click each one of those items. And I just think that's a futile exercise. I don't think that an inspector doesn't need to look at a checklist as they walk through a property. They need to look at the building as
Thank
they
you.
walk
I'm
through
the
a
same, old
property.
school. I don't want to be looking at a clipboard. I want to be looking at my building.
Exactly. So in that scenario, this would need to be marked okay instead of not applicable if you have that workflow process.
We want the workflow you suggested. Whatever button needs to be clicked, that's what we prefer.
Okay.
Everybody in consensus?
Yes, Chief.
Yeah, Chief, that sounds like it will work. I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So you want everything to be checked essentially. So just to go back to how I was using it before, anything like life safety systems, we would put that under fire protection, and then anything violation wise, we would violate them under the drop downs. So like, for example, we would find the fire extinguisher, we would put the service provider, we would put the date and all, and then if it was out of date, we would go find that violation and violate them for that. But we didn't check everything. We would only check the violations, and that's pretty much it. We wouldn't go through and like NA things or okay everything.
Right. So you want to NA things if they're not applicable to that inspection you're conducting.
And the reason why we
Okay, I
like to do
understand
that,
that.
Alex, there's some feedback on mine. I'm going to turn my speaker down. The reason why we like to do that, Alex, because in a civil lawsuit, if you check NA, that means it's not applicable. It looks like we did a thorough report. If we only go for strictly for violations that we're just trying to go for speed and not accuracy, it can make us look silly in a court of law. That's why we try to make sure we knock it out
Okay.
that way. Now, when it gets printed out, I'm hoping that it doesn't have to show all the categories as NA. We get to select pass and fail categories. Does that make sense?
So there's
that
two
possible?
Yep.
there's two reports we print out. The inspection letter, by the default inspection letter, it comes in two variations. It comes into a past variation, and then it comes into a violations noted variation. And if it's passed and there are no violations found, they just get a very simple one-page document that says an annual periodic inspection was conducted at this address at this time by this inspector. And in big watermark across the page, it says you passed. If there
Okay.
are violations, it will only list the violations. It will include the attachments for that violation. It will include the comments you made on that violation, and it
And
will
pictures?
include the pictures, the comments, and the compliance information that shows them what the standard says about why this needs to be corrected.
Short
And
and
it,
sweet. Then when
so,
they
and
pass
then,
it, they get a pass one. Okay.
yeah. So on the third letter we have, because some properties require it, and it will in most systems make about a 20-page document that they'll get electronic as a PDF, is what we call the full inspection report. And it will actually list every item on that violation checklist and tell them if that item was okay, not okay, or not applicable. So
Okay, and that's on the third letter?
that's the third letter that is commonly is an add. It's not an add-on, but it's a feature in our system to where, and the reason for that, you may have a management company or a school district. Our school districts down here are world renowned for it. You know, we go out and inspect them. and they have 2 violations. They say, well, that's just showing me the violations. You know, my school board or my principal wants to see the whole entire inspection report. Okay, not a problem. We turn around and we email them the full inspection report, and it's 20 pages long, and they go, well, that many items were on your checklist? And I went, yes. And you notice you passed about 95% of them. So you're doing pretty good. There's just these few items that you didn't pass.
Correct,
So
and that's why the NA looks good, because it looks thorough. We looked for everything.
correct, correct. And that full
And if it's
inspection
not, if it's
report,
not applicable, it means we didn't see it.
right. If that full, then that full inspection report basically is commonly the one that'll go to court if there's any kind of question about the inspection process.
And that's where I need it if it becomes a civil lawsuit or if it becomes a code violation issue. That's why I need to be as thorough and as complete as we can be, guys.
Correct.
Chuck, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
For instance, with the emergency plans and the fire doors, so if we need an emergency plan every year or a fire door every couple of years, do you as the administrators can set up and mail to that ALF, so to speak, for their fire doors, saying that they're due? Is that a possibility?
So to explain to me what you're looking for when you say emergency plan or fire doors. Do they need to
Okay.
provide something to you in that process?
Yes. Say, for instance, the smoke doors, the self-closing doors, the dampers and stuff like that have to be inspected every couple of years. So from there, could you send out a letter stating that, you know, before we get there to do the inspection, can you have your doors and dampers tested, service, or whatever it is that we require?
All right, so I'm following you. I just need to think about putting this in verbiage. Hold on one second. Let me think about this. So
And
we
when you're
wanna
done,
be-
I think I can break it down for you. What
Yeah,
we're
go ahead,
trying to
Chief. It's all yours. You can have it.
Oh, no problem. What he is asking is a very good question, is if, do you have a compliance engine built into your program where we knows we're coming out to do your inspection. We check that you fail your fire doors or your fire dampers. What he's asking is there a letter that can be generated from your system before we do that, and even or after we find the deficiency? Because it's more or less like a compliance engine.
So actually what I'm thinking about is we would probably take these special inspections, like for example, the fire door or the emergency plan one right here. We could
Yes,
make
sir.
that a recurring inspection, and we could
Yes,
set
sir.
that for every 24 months.
That's what we're asking. Could you drop down to NFPA, the list that says NFPA on there? Okay.
These two
NFPA
right
85
here.
door report, those are 2 out of the 3. Because there's one more that I don't see on there. One of them is my smoke fire dampers, one's my fire door, and one's my smoke door. The other one's NFPA 105. It might be because it's out of sync, but those are the 3 reports that Thomas brought up that we need to remind them that we need this practically before we get there. So if there's a way we can send out a letter on an annual basis to say, hey, when we come out on your inspection, we need to have this completed. That's a separate inspection requirement for us, is what we're saying. It's a specialty inspection.
Okay, so let's talk about this. So I want to wrap
Okay.
my head around this. So the first time that we can set these up to reoccur every 24 months, that's not a problem from the due date.
How about
That's
every
not a-
year? Because the doors are annually, and then the dampers are 4 years and 6 years.
That's fine. So we can do the dampers for 4 years. And I mean, you can set each one of these up into a different recurring process. That's not a problem.
Perfect.
That's the
Perfect.
easy part. The key part is this, is that you would have to schedule the first one in our system.
Okay.
And then once the first one is completed, we can reschedule that, or I have to check to make sure we can do that.
And
So
the second part of the question he was asking, is there a way that you would generate a letter to them?
I know, let's
for
get
that
part one.
inspection?
Let's get part one done first. So
Okay.
NFP 80 fire doors, is that annual or 24 months?
Both the smoke doors and fire doors are required annual.
Okay, I don't see smoke doors. I see fire door inspection report.
You see fire doors inspection, and you see fire doors, smoke doors is 105. It's not on your list. You got to drop down to probably find it.
Oh, okay. So fire doors are every 12 months.
Yeah, fire doors are 12 months, and NFPA 80, NFPA 105, which I don't see on the list,
It's smoke doors.
is smoke doors.
And those are every 12 months.
Those are 12-month intervals, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the smoke dampers, the fire smoke dampers, are there two separate?
And NFP, yes, sir. The smoke and slash dampers are another section of the code in NFP 80. That's why it's listed like that.
Okay.
There's smoke and fire dampers. It's not fire doors. It's smoke fire dampers. Those are 1 year after construction, and then 4 years after that, unless you're a hospital, is every 6 years.
Okay. So what I would do is I would create two separate inspections. I would select one fire smoke door inspection for hospitals, and then I
Yes,
would
sir.
have another smoke fire damper inspection for non-healthcare.
Correct.
And that way we could schedule those for either 4 years or 6 years.
Yes, sir. And the biggest thing is that sounds like the easy part. The second part you said we'll come to, that might be the challenge.
I don't think it's going to be a challenge. Don't worry about that.
Okay, good deal, good deal.
So let me
Because
see.
you're kind of helping us out create our own internal compliance engine.
So I'm writing this down. Give me 1 second, because this will be an email that I'll have to get on the phone with Benny and say, Benny, this is what we need to do. And he's
Yes,
going to
sir.
go, what do you mean?
What?
And
Yep.
then I'll have to say, no, this is what we need to do. So here's
Yeah.
going to be the issue.
Okay.
And I can tell you what the issue is going to be. In order for this to work, we will need to figure out who needs to get the notification. You follow me?
I do.
So
That would be
this
the property
means,
owner.
well, that means that y'all would have to go into all of these properties, and when you're scheduling these inspections, making sure that the contact or the property
date.
owner is up to date, including an email address. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. We do that on our annual inspections. We confirm contacts in the current. So yes, sir.
Okay, so let me make a note of that. Okay, so we're talking essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 inspection types that would need to send out an automated email. Now, what about the emergency plan one?
Emergency plan is an annual inspection, and they're targeted towards hospitals and group homes and ALS. So those are specific, and those are annual.
Okay, so the 12
But
months. Okay. And would you want to
they're
give
12 months.
them, would you want to give them a notice as well?
We would, because the reason why we give them the notice is that if we get that stuff out of the way before we walk in the door, the 80% of our documentation is done, and the 20% verification is what we try to shoot for, because that's our philosophy. 80% is documentation, including all that information, and 20% when we're on site, we verify.
Okay. So, and I'm just gonna, I'm gonna exit out of this because I'm gonna kind of show you what I'm thinking about. Is
Okay.
under side of here, and I think it would be under follow-up inspection, is I would be able to come in here, and I would come into here and I would look for an inspection type of, for example, emergency plan or whatever it might be is the inspection type. I'm trying to see what would actually work good for me. Let me figure this out. Let me think about this.
Okay.
It would be, let me think. No, it's going to have to be an inspection type. Yes, it would going to have to be an inspection type. So I would
And I
have to,
agree, because there are specific requirements.
so let's come down here and I would say I would have to get a list of smoke fire damper inspections for this year, and then I would come right here, and I can't see it, but I'll slide my screen over and I would hit search. So then it would give me a list of those properties that have that scheduled for this year. And then we would need to add right here a email button
Okay,
that when you click on that, it would send all of these in this list an email telling them in that process. But what you could do with that is I could come in here and say, not this year, I could go by date. And I can say if the due date is, and I change the dates to say January 1st through March 30th, so I could do it quarterly. Then I can send them, because see, you got one right here. And I would just basically click right here that says, hey, status is not completed. And I can send them a notification saying, hey, and I would have it to include in the notification what the due date is for that inspection. Because you'll notice in this list, it's going to show you the due date right here once it's scheduled and assigned to somebody. So it would be
that works.
assigned, and then I would do it, but I would have to have a way to bulk email the owner with some kind of notice that says, hey, you're scheduled for a smoke damper inspection on this date. Please make sure that your third party vendor has came out and updated your license. Cause that's really what you want them to do is make sure that their inspection is done by their vendor so that when you get there, there's nothing that's not current in their system.
That's the goal. And the thing that you just said is I like the date factor because ACA and the local county governments we do emergency plans with, they assign when they want them due to the occupant. So if we know the occupant is going to be in the first quarter, we'll send them a letter in the first quarter reminding them. And if it's going to be the second quarter, we can send them a letter saying we need your emergency plan review as a reminder. And same thing with doors. So well, I don't want to put somebody on a rigid schedule, but we can customize it by like, hey, I just had your doors done in November of this year. You're going to be due in 4 years from this November.
Right, right. So, and the reason why I like this is because this is something else I've been pushing for. I actually have always said when I managed, when I was a fire chief and I had a fire prevention bureau underneath me, I went to the fire prevention bureau chief and I said, I want to send a notification to every person that we're conducting their annual inspection on by email 30 to 60 days before we're coming to visit them. And they
That
thought
would be ideal.
and they thought I was crazy. And the reason for that is very simply, if I was coming to visit them for an annual periodic inspection and they knew I was coming in the next 30 and 60 days, we saw a 45% decrease in violations the first year we tested that.
That's what I'm saying. It's a change of behavior.
It's a change of behavior. Yes, it is. So, okay. So this is one, I can't say right now that we can do that 100%. I can say that I think it's well within our means to provide that.
And we have a very good use for that tool if that's possible. And I guarantee you that's going to be a big help for a lot of inspectors out there, and not just HJs, but the boots on the ground.
Okay. So I want to say that, yes, I think this is a good request for that process. And the reason why I'm thinking we can do that, because we just put over here in the permit section, or in the billing section, we have a trigger that if somebody's bill is past due by 30 or 60 days, we can bulk email them a notice, a reminder that they hadn't paid their bill yet. So we're talking about doing the same thing,
but in a different
right?
Different section of the yeah, that works well. That would be very, very helpful.
Yes.
That would be like that would be kind of like an internal compliance engine for us. And then
Yes.
we can expand it to fire alarms and fire sprinklers as well.
Yes. So This is gonna take a little work on me, but let me dig into this one.
Okay,
And
perfect.
does that, so I'm pretty sure, so we're talking about a pre-visit letter in that process.
Correct.
Do you currently send them out a pre-visit letter?
I actually do it under an inspection. If you go to the inspection list and you notice how they have the NFPA, I
Uh-huh.
put that as an inspection, and all my information is pre-typed out. I have it, I copy it, I paste it, I put it into the file, and I sent it as an inspection.
Okay, okay. All right,
So
so
I do have my materials all typed up and ready to go if you need that information to go on a letter.
I do. I was gonna ask you for that if you have a template
We
that does
did,
that.
but my template is basically a memo that's like a 4-page memo in one and a 3-page on the other one that breaks down the codes and requirements. If we have something to start with, so we can get people to help us clean it up to make it easier for people to read. I'll be
Okay.
more than happy to work with you because I speak code because that's what I'm expected to do.
Sure.
But
No, no,
if
no.
if we need to clean it up and put it into a nice letter form, because mine is a format, code format, and you understand
So,
what I'm talking about, Chief.
yes, I do. So I want you to send me those so that we can look at them and see if we can wordsmith them in that process.
I'm gonna send them to you right now as you're talking.
Okay. All right. So that was kind of off track, but I'm glad we discussed that because we need to talk about that. Okay. So
Yeah, that
we
was a
got,
good topic.
so all right. So back to inspection types. So other thing in pride side of here is from a management standpoint, you can designate who can create an inspection and who can't. And when I say that is from the property list, when they hit the new inspection button and they're given an option of what inspection types to create, they can actually break down and look at those inspection types and see, and you can say, well, no, everybody cannot create this inspection. Only me as the manager can create this type of inspection. So
Can you
that's
give me
what
an
that,
example?
so for example, if there's something that comes into play, you may say a special hazard inspection or a complaint inspection, to where you may only have certain people that can create a complaint inspection,
Okay,
and things like that nature. That's kind of where you can limit what inspections can be done inside of that process.
I got
So
you. So right now for my 633 inspectors, I don't have any limits on them. But if I did, I have that feature. How would you turn that feature on or off?
just click in the box
Can you give me an example how to click it?
right here. You notice on the
Okay,
screen, if
I see it now.
everybody,
I see it disappear.
right now, everybody can create an annual periodic inspection, or you can
Yes,
turn
sir.
it
I
off
don't
to
have
say
any.
they can.
Yeah, I want to be able to give them the flexibility.
Yep. Yep. I got you. I'm following that.
But
All
it's a
right.
feature. If I need it, I could use it. Like
Correct.
for example, I don't want anybody online having this, but my
Correct.
team.
That's correct. That's the way it'll be. So
Okay.
we'll make sure that they cannot create new inspections, and that's in the users and
I,
permissions. We'll go over users and permissions, with John. I think he's kind of managing users and permissions, and we'll need to
yes,
sit
sir.
down with him, you, me, and him, and sit down and talk about what you want inspectors to do in terms of
Okay.
inspections. And
You
pre-plans
got
are
it.
on a different tab, so we separate pre-plans and inspections in the process.
Gotcha.
All right. So we're running short on time because we had some other items we had to discuss. We're gonna have to do another session.
No
Uh,
problem.
but I want to finish with this, and this is going to be the big homework. So this is the big homework item. This is basically your inspection classifications is what we call them. I call it your checklist. So you have two options. You can build a checklist based on the occupancy types, or you can build a checklist based on what we call violation list. So you'll notice he's dropped in a whole bunch of examples of checklists. So one of the ones he dropped in that I want you guys to look at is this one down here, and I forget where he put it. Where did he put it? He had it in here. It's not there no more. He took it out. Dang gummit, Benny. There was one in here from another fire department. So What I'll show
I
you
saw
is
you looking
this.
at, I saw you looking at earlier, it was from Lakeland Fire Department.
Yeah, but he took it out. I don't know why he took it out.
It was in the beginning, I saw it.
Yeah, but now it's not there. I don't know where it went. All right, so just to
Okay.
kind of show you this, I'll give you the rundown on this.
All right,
This is where you type in the code reference. You know, section 1, yada, 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 whatever it might be. This is the actual verbiage that you want the inspector to review to validate if it's correct or not. So for example, exit lights, functioning, operational and functioning. That would be okay or either not okay. So if they're not functioning, so you want to write them as positive statements. Does that make sense?
I do.
So for right here, I would have hydrants not blocked or obstructive. I wouldn't have hydrants blocked or obstructed because okay means that they are blocked. Not okay means they're not blocked, and it's backwards because not okay it triggers a violation. Okay does not trigger a violation in that process.
Correct.
So
And
that's
we
one of
also
the
give them
wings.
positive reinforcement. Yep.
So that means that that is something we have to look at inside of there as far as dealing with that process of that. So I would tell you to look at these lists and play with these lists and see what's there in that process to make sure you can get something that works with. So the second column is where we put that verbiage. So according to NFPA such and such and such and such, hydrants shall not be blocked so that fire department has access, or according to county ordinance such and such, fire hydrants should not be blocked, or according to city ordinance such and such. So you kind of follow what the compliance field means?
Yeah, the compliance is the actual statute quotation.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Then the inspection violation is the nice verbiage to
I call it the
basically.
I call it the public language.
Okay. Yes, yes, sir. The public language. If he can help us get that Lakeland list, because that's kind of what we were trying to do.
Well,
with,
and I'm hoping that Benny's going to hear back and have that. So I'm hoping for that
Yes,
real
sir.
quick. So hold off on doing
Perfect.
that until we get this list. The next
Okay.
column is the is company list. So where this
Is
comes into
company.
play is, let's say, for example, you have an item that says fire extinguishers are current, fire extinguisher and are fire extinguisher, whatever the terminology is, fire extinguisher current, as far as being inspected. Fire extinguisher inspections are current. If you click the is company box, when they go to that item, even though it's okay, they can expand that item and there's going to be a field that's going to add into it the expiration date for that extinguisher and the company. And then that list of companies is going to drop down so you can pick which company did that inspection and what the expiration date is for that extinguisher. Does that make sense?
I can hear my fire inspectors dancing because singing your praises because we have to type that in every time.
No, so we're going to give you, so if we
Yep.
click is company next to that item, it's going to allow in the drop down a list of all the companies and a place for
Yep.
them to enter the date that it was the current date of that process.
I'm
And we
dancing
get
on
to
the
build
desk
that
right
list?
now.
So the next column where it says is categories, this is where we group everything together. So we'll build in all of your inspection items. We'll put the clients, we'll put his companies, then we'll come over here and say, okay, I want this item to belong to sprinkler systems. I want this item to belong to fire extinguishers. So when that process, what it's going to do is it's going to basically trigger that we're going to group these things together. And when I say grouping them up here in this inspection, this is what I'm talking about, the categories. These are all different categories, and you define these categories in your checklist. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I think
And
it
then,
does.
and then over here, let's say there's a violation that an item that you used on your checklist that is no longer pertinent to your checklist moving forward. By unchecking the box, we actually remove that from your system. So moving forward, they will no longer see that item on a checklist. It'll be kept for historical purposes, but not moving forward. The
Okay.
next box is basically going to be how, if this thing fails, this individual item fails, how many days do you want to reschedule the reinspection for? Why we allow you to do it per item is you may have an item that relates to the fire alarm system or the sprinkler system that you want to come out in 5 days. You're not giving them 30 days to fix it. You can take that individual item and give it a separate recall versus the standard 30-day recall.
I like
And then
that.
the last two basically over here, if this is an item that you're going to flag defaultly to always be a minor item, which means it's not going to trigger a reinspection, but it'll show up on the next annual or periodic inspection if it fails, you can click the minor box here. The inspector can always uncheck it. So some people like to click it here. My personal preference is I'm going to leave that up to the inspector. Since we have the minor feature turned on for you guys, if I'm walking through a building and talking to the homeowner or the business owner, and I see an exit bulb out, and he says he's fixing everything else, and he's just got to go get some bulbs to replace them, I'm going to flag that as minor on that inspection. But if I'm walking through the property and there's every exit light has one exit bulb out and there's 10 exit lights in the building, I'm going to flag that as a full-time violation and come back and check that they change them all out. So I like to give that frequency to the inspector to make that call. And then the last thing right here is mandatory, which means if no matter what, he has to go to that question and check that box. That's where I touch that button, and I hate that button because I have some departments that have made all of their inspections items mandatory. So every inspector has to go check every one of those categories, and he can't use the default all feature at the bottom of the page.
No flexibility.
So,
Chuck, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the recall 30 days, if I hit or my reinspection comes up on a Saturday, can I go in the calendar and move that?
We're already going to move it for you automatically.
Okay.
Saturdays,
so there
we
will
move.
never be.
Nope, Saturdays, and we'll give you a little verbiage at the bottom when you go to hit submit. We'll say, hey, this inspection date falls on a weekend. Saturdays, we move to Fridays. Sundays, we move to Mondays.
Okay, because here at our office, we do our re-inspections on Thursdays and Fridays. So the ability to move my re-inspection from a Monday to a Friday would be good. Is that a possibility?
So what you can do is on the bottom of every inspection, if you get to the very bottom, if there is a follow-up inspection required for that building, you have the rights to change that date on the fly.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, you can do that as well in that process. All right, so I'm out of time. I've got to do another session in 30 minutes and I got to get my voice. You're on my third session out of 5 sessions I have to do today. I don't know why I did this to myself. We're not through.
I'm gonna say.
Well, Friday's a holiday and
fine.
nobody wants to do training on Friday. So they're trying to cram it into 4 days. And so so I'm having to take 5 days and cram it into 4. So we're not through. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just have one request that we schedule our trainings on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because of where our calendars fall.
Okay.
So if you can get, and let us know in advance, we'll open up our schedule to be available for you.
Next Wednesday, let's do 1 to 3. I would say my time, but that's 1 to 3 is 2 to 4 your time. Is 2 to 4 too bad for you guys next week?
No, I think it'll work. What do you guys think? I can't hear you guys.
What time did you say now?
I think that's good.
Next Wednesday between 2 and 4. I'm trying to get your calendar up while we're talking to see what you guys have in the calendars. So give me 1 second, Chuck. I got a little tool in our toolbox that we can pull out real quick. Making sure nobody has vacations. It won't let me open something up because I was trying to send you an email earlier. Now it will. Okay.
Went up from that, huh?
Now you're talking about the 16th of November, correct, Chuck?
Yes, I'm in Kansas City the
Okay.
14th and 15th. I fly back the 15th that night. Provided that I
All
don't
right.
get slammed up, I'll be in the home office on the 16th.
We do have Wednesday open for all 4 of us. We're gonna be here Tuesday and Wednesday. So Wednesday works for us. You want local time, my time, 2 o'clock?
Yeah, Eastern time, 2 o'clock, if that's okay, 2 to 4 or 2 to 4:30, whatever we can do. Because I want to
2 to
finish up.
4:30, well, 2:30 to 4, 2 o'clock to 4:30 or 2:30 to 4:30, which was best for you?
I want to do 2 to 4:30 so that we've got
Okay.
time.
All right, sir, I'm putting it in our calendar, and if you can send us the link in advance, we'll be ready for you.
Perfect. And I will go in and I'm going to, as soon as this video gets through recording, I will send it to you.
Good, because I want to look over the category one more time because my brain kind of blanked out for a second.
Sure.
So I'll
Sure.
look at the video.
And hopefully by then, we will have those other inspection checklists uploaded.
That is my biggest heartburn right now. So if you get that done, that would make life so much better for all of us.
And you just owe me a list of permits versus inspections.
I'll have that. I'll go through the list. I got it on my homework list to send that to you by email.
Perfect. That'll work.
All right, sir. You'll probably get it next week.
Great. Y'all have a great day.
All right, sir. Thank you, and good luck on your next one.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thank you.